One Soccer Hangouts. I'm Asa Raymond with Kurt Larson, Oliver Platts, and very happy to have a special guest join us once again. Toronto Lynx, former Toronto Lynx player, former Canadian men's national team player, Tottenham Hotspur, Fulham as well. Paul Stalteri, thank you so much for coming on with us today, Paul.
Hey guys, no problem. How's everything?
Toronto Lynx shout out. Toronto Lynx shout out. Like that.
That's where he started his career, so I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit, Paul. But currently, assistant coach with York9, teaming up with your good pal, Jim Brennan. How did you land that gig? I'm sure Kurt will take credit for getting you the job after coming on with us at One Soccer before. But yeah, how did that all play out?
Well, it was, in there where I think the club are looking to make some changes in their backroom staff, and I spoke to Jimmy a number of times, even leading into the first season, where I was busy more with the federation and doing a lot of things with that. So things just didn't work out at that time in particular. So leading into the second season, after he'd made some changes to his staff, the talks got a lot more serious. Led to a decision early in the year on joining the club, and then having a real impact on everyday procedure with the team and a lot of decisions going into what would be with the team as well. So it was a big decision on my part, big change to dedicate myself on an everyday basis to the club. So that was something that's changed a lot. But really looking forward to getting going here. We kind of did, and we got this little break. So hopefully once we get going again, it'll be full speed ahead after that.
Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys were down. You were down with the team in Florida, I believe, correct?
Yeah, we were in training camp in Florida. We were probably 3 weeks into to training, so the boys were really starting to get going and get into the swing of things, really starting to get fit. And we had to cut the trip short in Florida in our training camp. We missed a couple of the games that we were meant to play, so that was a bit of a disappointment for sure, having to cut the trip short, and also missed the couple of friendly games that we had set up towards the end of the camp as well.
So the players got a taste of the Stalteri style. Some people are calling you a bit of a disciplinarian. We had Chris Manella on one of our first One Soccer Hangouts, and he said that he better be fit when play resumes once again, because, quote, he said, because I know if I come back unfit, Paul Stalteri's going to be on me to be running. So I have to ask you, Paul, what does it mean to be a disciplinarian coach, regarded as one anyway?
Well, I wouldn't say disciplinarian as necessarily. I just say that I think the boys I've started to understand just what my philosophy and what the club's philosophy and part with Jimmy as well is that if you got to be really fit, you got to be top fit to play this game at the highest level. And I think the boys are they started to tick onto that and quickly picked that up from the first session onwards, and they realized that every session is very intense, very difficult, very tough, but that's the norm. That's the standard. That's the standard of a professional-based football player, and I think that's what they're starting to realize. So I wouldn't say more or less disciplinarian. I'd just say that's what the standard is in professional football.
What are some of the biggest challenges when coaching this younger generation? I'm sure that the game is different, but the talk and Instagram, like the language and everything that we use is completely different. When you're talking to these kids and getting your message across, what are some of the biggest challenges for you as a coach now, Paul?
Yeah, probably I got to go ask my kids first. My two young kids, what all this nonsense really means, because I got when it comes to all these different things. I think the biggest difference now with these young players and the players in this generation is social media, without a doubt. And before it was even simpler than that. Just social media was only on a couple of different platforms and stuff. Now it seems, like you said, there's so many different ones out there that I literally can't keep track. I couldn't keep track when it first started, let alone now. So that remains a challenge. And like I said, I usually go to my kids when I probably need a little bit more update on what's the newest thing going and things like that. But no doubt that's a challenge. That's a bit different going on.
Do you think it becomes a distraction for these players, though?
You hope it's a healthy one in one sense. I mean, it could be used as a healthy distraction. You know, a little bit, I wouldn't say detrimental, but it could hurt in terms of always being access to information, always wanting information, always demanding information on the spot. You know, games being played, and before you even get showered and stuff, you got your device on and seeing what's going on after results. So I think those things got to be monitored. Those things got to be controlled. And then they've got to have the proper education with that stuff, because with information comes good and bad. That's for sure.
Could you imagine having to listen to someone like me constantly on social media and having to read all the nonsense that I write about constantly on social media? You wouldn't have done that back in the day, right, Paul?
Well, see, yeah, back in the day, you had to wait for the newspapers to come out and get handled. Now,
but did you follow? Did you follow that stuff? I mean, let's just transition back to yourself. I mean, would you follow what the tabloids were saying in the UK or in Germany? Would you follow that stuff? Would you pay any attention to it?
I think early in my career, I did for sure. You know, when I first started out in Germany, it was very, you know, there was a couple major newspapers, national newspapers that would analyze each game and analyze each player. And then there was the local newspapers, the 3 or 4 of those ones in Bremen that would analyze you as well. So you were, you know, you had all these different, you know, you call it markings or notes or rankings, ratings, whatever you want to call it. You usually wait a day or two to get those out. And, you know, people would always have a look at that and see what they were. And I think, you know, early on in your career, you were a little bit more worried about that stuff. I think later in my career, as I got a bit older, I kind of put that stuff on the back burner and really stopped looking at it. But no doubt, players look at it. Players see what they want to. They see it. They no matter how thick their skin is, they're getting judged, and whenever someone's getting judged or rated, they're looking at what people think of them. That's for sure.
I've been pulled aside after many training sessions to have players and coaches tell me what they think of my ratings.
They gave it to a few reporters when I played too on their ratings as well. So yeah, I always said to them, it's impossible. You're sitting there watching a game, and you're lucky if you can analyze 2-3 players, let alone 22 all at once. So.
That's true. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true.
Paul, we've discussed this a little bit on our shows, that there is this kind of narrative out there that players today are wired a little bit differently, maybe to previous generations. Some say they're not quite as gritty. They don't handle adversity maybe as well. Do you think there's truth to that? And does it affect how you coach?
Yeah, no, yeah, you definitely got to be a little bit wary in terms of how you're speaking to kids. But back in the day, you had to be careful as well. I mean, there was coaches that would be able to tear a strip off a player, but you have to be fair. The good coaches and the good managers knew which ones they could do it to and which ones they couldn't do it to. So I don't think human changed in that matter. I think you just got to be able to know your players, understand your players, and that's the key, is understanding each individual player and handling them on a different basis. I mean, if you go back in the day to any of the top managers, there's no manager in the world, I think, handled every single player the same way in the dressing room than handling them as an individual. No successful manager anyway.
All right, Paul, we got our first question from our YouTube stream. BColt93 is asking, with both you and Jimmy having played at the highest levels in Europe, do you try to instill a European attitude into the team, even with playoffs included in the CPL format?
Well, one thing we touched base on earlier is the standard. I mean, there's a standard we live upon, and that's from the moment the session gets going until the end of that session. So this standard is always at the highest professional level. Everything is ready to go, and the players realize from day one what they were getting themselves into. So I think the biggest thing now is bringing them to playing and training in on an everyday basis. That's not a once in a while. That's an everyday basis. You know, once training is ready to go, it's set up, it's organized. There's no questions. There's no situations where there's downtime during the session. Everyone knows exactly what's happening. Everyone knows. And that's what we've been used to as we've played throughout the years in all the different clubs throughout Europe.
Paul, can you just go a little bit deeper into what that standard actually means? It's something that I've heard from other coaches. I mean, I know Jurgen Klinsmann, when he was coaching in the United States, would always talk about the difference in even just training environments, training standards between the highest levels in Europe and then maybe a Major League Soccer environment and players just fighting differently for their positions based on where they're playing in the world. So what does that standard actually mean? Can you dive deeper into that and maybe give a few examples?
Quick one would be right off the top of my head is intensity. I think the intensity of the training session. There's, if you a lot of people I know have come back and they've gone to Germany, for example, and they've watched training sessions. They come back with they couldn't believe the level of intensity in the session, the level of you say battle or individual battles that happened in the training session, and the amount of near almost going to the challenges that were flying in at the training session. Nothing bad, but just it's a war almost every single day in those sessions. It's a battle, and those are the things. Those little details, those little attention to details that you're trying to bring throughout every session, whether it's a passing drill or whether that's a possession drill, it's a little details, little attention to detail that we're always looking at. You're always seeing where you're passing the ball to the right side of the right foot, right area of the foot, what part of the foot are you using, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different things. Attention to detail is one of them in that, and I think the level of intensity that you're bringing to every session is the difference than what any of the players sometimes might have been used to in the past.
Were there any coaches that you played under in Europe that have particularly influenced you in terms of setting that standard?
No, I'd say no. There's a lot of them. I think early on in my time in Germany, I had the longest tenure I had under a manager was Thomas Schaaf at Bremen, and he was a big influence in terms of not just the way I'm coaching now, but also when I played and learning the game. He was probably the first guy when I went over there, the real European, the real football in terms of how it was, and you quickly noticed that in Germany. And he was, he managed the club for a number of years and had some great success. So he's definitely one for sure. And then I was fortunate enough to place him under some real great managers in England as well, where you pick and choose little bits and pieces from every one of them, and you try to put it into your own philosophy, your own little vision, and your own little way you want the game to be played and how you see it being played.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see how you implement that style philosophy into York9. One thing I want to know from you is how hard it's been to pursue coaching as a profession, especially being born in Canada. Right now, the CPL has a few Canadian-born coaches: Bobby Smirniotis, Jeff Paulus, Jim Brennan, obviously, and another assistant, Martin Nash. It's providing opportunities for Canadians to coach. How challenging has it been for you to pursue this profession?
Well, no, it's a challenge for sure. One that I knew the moment I moved back from Europe would be even tougher. I had the opportunity either to stick in Germany and stick in German football and raise the family there and learn the game there on the other side of it, in the coaching side, or move back to North America, to Canada in particular, and give it a go here and be back close with the family and friends again. But in saying that, it makes that job a lot difficult, a lot more tougher. I think 6, 7, 8 years ago when I got back, the jobs are definitely much more limited than they are even right now, given the CPL just getting going. I was fortunate enough to be able to give him the job when Tony Fonseca took over with Canada Soccer and taking over, being involved in the youth setup, and eventually 5, 6 years working with the federation and all the different levels. So that was an opportunity for me to get to learn the game itself and really get known without being forced into an everyday stressful impact. So it was me learning the game at the 15s and the 17s, the 20s, even the Olympic team, and then getting a lot of experience under Octavio Zambrano with the senior team. So it was a great time for me, but it was, I was a little bit fortunate enough to get that. There's not that many of those jobs they're lying around for a lot of young Canadians trying to become coaching as a profession.
All right, let's get to the professional career now, the playing career. How does a kid go from the Toronto Lynx to Werder Bremen? I understand there was a scout watching a Toronto Lynx game, and that's how you got picked up. How does that happen?
Yeah, I still don't really understand it either. I mean, it was a long time ago now. I just got, there was a gentleman picked up the phone one day and gave me a call and said that there was an opportunity to head to Germany, head to Bremen, and go on a 2-week trial there, which and that was it. That was what kind of opened the door for me. And I said it before. There's what I've told a lot of players is, and a lot of young kids now, and even myself when I went there. You think it was a 2-week trial, but those 2-week trials just doesn't exist. They never did. I mean, it was you went there, and I heard the coach or overheard the coach talking, and it was basically, you've got one session, and we'll see if you join us in the afternoon. So it was you got the 10 a.m. session, and then we'll see if you're good enough to stay here for the 3 o'clock one. If not, maybe go train with the reserves, and we'll see you. We'll see you maybe in the stands sometime watching a game if you're lucky. So it was like that. There was no 2-week trial. It was one morning that led to the afternoon, and from there it led to the next day, and then so on and so forth for about 9 or 10 days there while I was in Germany at my first start there.
Were you reaching out to go ahead, Ollie?
Sorry, so do you remember what you were kind of thinking during that trial, like having that one opportunity to get your chance in Europe, essentially?
Yeah, it was a surprise. I mean, I don't think they heard me. I don't think they realized I heard them kind of overheard that. I think they thought it was speaking through another person that was there with me, who pretended that I didn't hear it, or he just didn't realize I heard it. But I kind of am like that. I kind of hear a lot of things in a room, and I picked that up very, very quickly. That it was one session which led to the next. So I thought it maybe you're thinking at first, well, yeah, that doesn't exist. But there was many occasions where later on you find out many occasions where a lot of players would show up and they were gone within a session or two. So it definitely did happen quite often. So it was a lot of pressure, but at the same time, it's like that. You just got to be ready and be willing to perform, and under that pressure, that goes without saying.
Mm-hmm. Paul, we asked Jay Demerit a similar question. Just a similar story to you, where he went over there, had an opportunity to impress, eventually did impress, and he took his moment. Was there a time when you felt like you had finally made it, in a sense, that you were a little more comfortable, that it was the first big match or something like that? Was there a moment when you felt like you had made it in Germany?
No, not really, because I think the moment you did that was the moment you probably were going to get
I knew you were going to say that. And, no days off.
No, it was you could say the first game. I had what was really a real dream debut, playing in my first game with Kevin McKenna joined me on the other side, the first two Canadians to play in the league in that time. And for me, scoring in the game was a dream debut. But if you sat back on that, that it would have been that would have been detrimental. And you got to look up. There's another 20 players in the dressing room looking at you and seeing how you're reacting to your little 24 hours of success that you've had. And if you think you're too Big Ten to the door, you'll be quickly reminded from the real players in the dressing room that you're just a small piece of the puzzle that's just starting out your career. So I was quickly realizing at that time that if you set on the ways that you've on the success that you just had, you're about to set yourself up for a lot of failure in the future. So,
did you chat with Kevin McKenna after the match? It must have been a surreal experience for both of you.
Yeah, he actually had to stay in Bremen with me because we went out for dinner after. I remember, because we went to the national team right after we had a game, so we both traveled together after the match. He had a little bit more to drink than I did because he had to sleep that night. And he had a bit of he was having a couple of nightmares on the pitch, so I had to sober him up a little bit. We both. No, I'm just kidding around. We both had the night out, a little dinner, and then we were off. I think we flew into to Mexico the next night for a qualifying match against Mexico, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a pretty kind of remarkable time in that I think when you won the Bundesliga in 2004, you won it at Bayern with Owen Hargreaves, another Canadian-born player on the other side. Obviously, a lot of Americans have gone to Germany as well. Is there something about that league that has been particularly good to North American players?
I think the mentality. A lot of the successful North Americans that can go there, they have a real strong mentality. They're able to grind it out on a daily basis. It's an environment where if you're not ready to adapt to the German lifestyle, to adapt to the German mentality, then you will struggle. I think but if you are ready to adapt, they are very open-minded, to be honest, with a lot of individuals that do come in there. But you got to remember, you're in a different country, you're in their country, and you have to adapt to their rules and their methods and their way of life. And if you're able to do that, I think the North Americans that are able to do that do have a strong mindset. They're able physically to keep up with the physical demands of the football that's played over in Germany. So that part of it they do well with. And if if they can meet that with their mindset and their mind approach and their approach to every day in training, you see why a lot of them are successful.
Let's focus.
Sorry, is that something that you can kind of coach when you're talking about your York9 players now who maybe want to go to Europe, or is it just born in you?
Well, you can guide them along. You can help them. You can give them all the influence and all the guidance that you can transfer over to them. And again, the ones that are real strong mentally and real strong mindset pick that up and they take that in. And the ones that aren't, that's the difference in life. Unfortunately, those are the ones that are going to be left behind. Mm-hmm. I'd say that's the difference in professional sports. It's the mindset. It's the mental strength of the individual. The talent can take you so far, and the next level and the next difference is that real mindset, that real mental strength that the individual athlete has.
Is there something about the North American player, football player, soccer player, that compared to, say, the European or the German that makes it so maybe they can't meet that level of intensity you're talking about?
Is there what? Sorry?
Is there something about the North American player? You talk about the difference in training methods and the intensity within training, and how when people have gone to Germany, they've come back and said the level of intensity within the training session is so much higher over there. Is there something that you have seen within the North American player that prevents them from just having that, within them? Why is it different there?
Well, no. One of the reasons they are successful, a lot of the North Americans are successful there, is that one, they can meet the physical challenges. They can do it. A lot of we are physically. There's some real physical great athletes that come out of Canada and the U.S. and that's where there's certain countries and certain places that there are players that do come into Germany that struggle physically. They just struggle. They can't meet those physical demands. But a lot of the players and a lot of the athletes from here, they're quick. They can run. Their physical level, their fitness levels on a real good high level that meets that demand. They have that the quickness as well. Like I said, complete physical nature. They're able to meet that, and that's one of the reasons in Germany that they're able to be successful. But in terms of them being able to do that on an everyday basis here, there's no question that they shouldn't be able to do that. If a handful of them or a dozen of these players can go over to Germany and do well there, that's no excuse why the rest of them here can't train at that level and can't have that level of intensity that matches what is being played over in Europe.
Yeah, one player has all the physical traits. One Canadian national team player, that's Alphonso Davies, currently in the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich. His road to the Bundesliga, top tier, very different from yours. You had to work your way onto the first team. But what are some of the challenges that Alphonso Davies has now and that he'll have going into his second year with the club?
Well, I think you just said it. I mean, this is really his first kind of full season. I mean, last year was he wasn't really. He was just getting adapted. He played a lot more games probably in the second team than he did in the first team. But this year he's established himself at that left back role in Munich. I don't think he envisioned himself playing there before he got there. But one injury led to another. Before you knew it, they had 3-4 of their back four injured. So he kind of went there out of necessity, and now he's trying to made it his own. So once this break leads into his full second season, will be a big challenge. I mean, I know the second season for me was a big challenge when I was in Germany. In the first season, but then all of a sudden the league kind of gets to know you, and you've got to meet that next stage of development into your game, and so I'm sure he's going to have a lot of challenges as well leading into his second season. And if he can get by that second season, I think he's well on his way.
And then moving on to the other great young Canadian star, Jonathan David. He will have a big decision ahead of him. He's already been linked to some top clubs, including Arsenal, Barcelona. We'll see where he ends up. But what does he have to consider when making this decision?
Well, I've known Johnny for a long time. I've had him since 14, 15 years old with the youth team, so I know him well. He played in my under-17 team as well with me, but and led the line there. He's a great kid, great personality, real mentally strong individual, very, very focused, knows exactly what he wants, and very difficult nut to crack in terms of changing that mindset, which is sometimes a good thing or a bad thing. But he knows what he wants. I'm sure he already knows what he wants. I'm sure he already has an idea. I know he's knowing him well, conservative, not ready to probably jump into something that he's not ready for. And I think it's important for him, but he knows that more than anybody. And I think it's important for him that he gets himself into, whether that's staying in Belgium, whether that's going to another country, whether that's going to another club in Belgium, or a big club in England, or a big club in Europe somewhere. But he's got to be in a position where you got to get games. And if you're not getting, you're not playing, you're going to struggle no matter what you are. And I think if you compare, Alphonso this season, the difference now is he's getting games and he's playing 90 minutes. And if you're not playing 90 minutes and you're not playing regularly, it doesn't matter how much talent you have, you're going to struggle, and you're going to struggle physically, you're going to struggle mentally. And I think the most important thing for Johnny right now is he's established himself in the league in Belgium. He's got himself a lot of goals. He's played well. And the next level will be where can he get in this next challenge, but something that's going to allow him still to play week in and week out and get himself to the next level.
Having worked with a player like Jonathan and been with the youth national teams, do you have a theory on why suddenly this country is producing so many kind of dynamic attacking players, and maybe the Stalteris and the DeVosses and McKennas are a little bit fewer and further between nowadays?
Maybe you put DeVos and the McKennas on that one side. No, I don't. Look, it's not a fluke that we've been. The youth system's changed in North America for a number of years, or in Canada especially for a number of years. This is no surprise to me, having worked with players since 14, 15 years old. 6-7 years ago when I first started out in the job, there was no. You saw a lot of these players coming through, boys like Tabla coming out of Montreal. There was a lot of players coming through that had the talent, that had an eye for goal. It's just, where can these players play and where can they get their minutes to get to the next level? And but I'm not at all surprised. Do I have a theory behind it? Perhaps. There's a number of factors that have led to that, but I'm not surprised at all, knowing that I've seen these guys for the last 5-6 years in the program playing.
Yeah. What do you think has happened on the other side to maybe the lack of defenders that we see nowadays at least with the senior national team right now?
Yeah, sometimes you could leave that down to, it could be just a coincidence that you don't have that stalwart at the back, that you're looking for that big center back that's got that mobility, and he's able to have that physical presence down the spine of your team that can establish himself. You need that in any successful team, any big club or any big country that's been successful has had that. There's no doubt it's missing in our pedigree in terms of what we're looking for and what we have right now in the national team setup. There's no ways around that. There's just do I have the answer? Not really, unfortunately, but it's definitely a problem in the right now in terms of having that. I don't want to say an old-fashioned center back, but I want to say a center back that wants to defend, a center back that wants to head the ball, a center back that wants to put his body behind a ball and block shots and put a tackle in and do all the things that a defender needs to do. And we need to get back to that. again, and it's a mind state, it's a mindset, and it's a you know, do you want to win the ball or not? And that comes down to the mental thing of every individual player.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to Tottenham now and your playing days in Tottenham. We'll get right to that great goal against West Ham in 2007 because we were talking about this in our production meeting before setting up this chat with you. And right away, when we went to the goal, some people said, I won't say who, some people said it was terrible. Some people said it was a great goal because it was a tap-in in the end.
Who said it was terrible?
It was said on our chat. Because it was a tap-in in the end. But to me, it was a great goal. You ran the length of the field. You get one of the first touches on the ball, and you chase it down, and then you put the finishing touch on it. So where does that goal rank for you based on just skill, determination alone? If you just isolate that goal itself, take the sentimentality out of it, and just focus on the goal, where does it rank for you?
Terrible.
Why do you say that?
Who would say, Kurt, you guys got to sack whoever said terrible. Come on.
Well, I don't remember anybody saying that, to be honest. But
I did not say terrible, just to clear myself.
Look, I think the key, I think the most important part of the goal, I mean, and I'm not just saying that it was the initial pass out to Jermaine.
Yeah.
That was the, you know, that starts the goal itself from our own end. And at that point, you're just following up on a transition, and you're seeing a lot of space in front of you, and you're just your natural reaction is to take that space up. And believe it or not, I used to play. I grew up playing more of an attacking role, so it was kind of in that instinct to just keep going forward. One, I knew Jermaine was never going to pass the ball, that was for sure, but that's not in his nature either. So I was just following up on the play, and if you really look at it, there was another player ahead of me that kind of gave up on it.
That's right.
And it could have been his, but he kind of gave up on it, and I kept going. So I was fortunate enough that it landed right in front of me, and then the rest is history. And like any good old English fan and English footballing fan, and especially at a club like Tottenham, they kind of never let you forget some of the great memories that you were able to, and fortunate enough to bring to the club.
So you know me, I like talking. Sorry?
I'm just wondering if that's number one then for Paul Stalteri.
In terms of
you scored?
memory?
Yeah.
No, I think more of a success is for sure. The memories that I have the most on is one is winning the title with Bremen, and also being fortunate enough to win the cup that year, and being the first team in our club's history to do a double. For sure, on a club level, that's the biggest highlight that I've had with them, being able to play in virtually every game that season with them, almost 90 minutes in every game. So, you know, on a personal level, those kind of things come into play, and that's the kind of highlight. But it's also on the team level, being able to the silverware, which is the most important thing, and that's why you play the game.
Well, I like talking about the bad memories too. Sometimes I'm the bad guy in this show. We asked
the other day by Ledgerwood.
Sorry?
I heard Ledgerwood was hammering you the other day.
Oh, no, he's easy on me. That's nothing. No. But we asked Jay Demerit a similar question about, you know, players who are more attacking that gave him problems consistently. And I know he spent a majority of his career in England. You were maybe in Germany a little bit more. So between Germany and then, of course, getting to the Premier League, any attacking players that come to mind that gave you some problems, or that you didn't like playing against, or you found wasn't a good matchup for you?
The easy ones, you know, I'll disregard guys like Ronaldo and stuff, because that's just, those are the easy answers, because they're, you know, they give everybody, I think, that kind of a day. But if you roll past that easy answer, I think I don't know if you remember the boy Martin Petrov. He comes up with he played in Man City, and he was playing in Wolfsburg for a number of years, and we had a lot of matches where he was on the left and I was on the right, and just an old-fashioned winger, kind of get the ball and dribble right at you, and it didn't matter if you won half of the battles or more than half the battles. He was going to dribble again at you and take you on again. And he had a wicked left foot, and he didn't need a lot of space, and he can get a cross off without a fraction of any kind of an inch. All he needed was an inch, and he'd whip a ball around or get by you. And he was a tough one, because he would just, like I said, get the ball and run at you with pace and be real direct. And if you gave him that opportunity, you were going to be in for a long day. And he was one that comes to mind. That's not a household name maybe for a lot of players, a lot of people, but one on a day where he could give you a long run around. And he was a tough one. Nani was a tough battle as well at Man United. Just very light-footed, could shift, can go either way. On his day when he was ready to play, he was a tough one as well. But I like to say Martin just because it's not an answer a lot of people think about, but he was one of those old wingers that was a real tough player to play against on his day for sure.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about two players you played with who I find particularly interesting, at least. Both top strikers. At Bremen, you had Aílton, and then at Spurs, you had Berbatov, who I don't want to say they're too similar, but they're both players with immense technical ability, but maybe not known for their kind of work ethic as much as some others. Who was the more talented, in your opinion, out of those two, and what kind of memories do you have of them?
More talented on the ball, complete was Berbatov, no doubt. I mean, he had one of the most talented players I've ever played with, and you realize that when we played against him in Germany when he was at Leverkusen. He was another tough opponent to play against. So he could have been on that list as mine as well, because he could go. He just wasn't a winger. He was more of a obviously a striker, but yeah. Unbelievable technique, unbelievable skill. Didn't look fast, but he can turn, he could finish. No real weak part to his game. Just like I said, an unbelievable, tremendous talent. Aílton, different type of player for sure. Not nearly as technical, but he had speed, and he was so quick, and he played right off your shoulder, be called offside 89 times in a game, but the 90th time, when the 91st time he wasn't, it was in the back of the net, and he had a left foot that was probably next to none. You give him half a chance, and it was in, and he was he just had that lethal left foot that could finish on any aspect. You can hit strike balls in flush. He can hit it with the side of his foot, roll it into the back of the net, hit it on the volley, hit it on the drop volley. His left foot was a fantastic tool, fantastic weapon, and that's where he was definitely scored a majority of his goals.
Mm-hmm. How deceptive was his speed, though? Because didn't he play a little bit bigger? And isn't he? Is he the type of player?
It's deceptive. He looks bigger than he was. He kind of got a little shorter neck kind of thing. So he looks a little heavier than he was when he was actually playing. Now he's a bit heavier for sure. He looked it, but he was always one of the fastest, quickest guys on the team, if not one of the quickest in the league. And once he got going, he was gone. So he was, that was part of his strength, how quick he can play. And again, he was always playing on the shoulder, so he's always right on the border of being offside. And I'll bet you now he would have scored probably half a dozen more goals a season with the offside rules the way they are now, because. Right. A lot of the decisions were very close that he was probably called offside on, that probably wouldn't have been when you have the video replay that's available nowadays.
Yeah, speed could have worked against you in those instances. I want you to reflect now, Paul, on your national team career and just sum up your time with the Canadian team.
Yeah, I think it was up and down for sure. Some, highlighted by, it's always highlighted by winning the Gold Cup and being able to do that as a young player. But, that was definitely a huge highlight for us to win that major trophy for Canada. No doubt, I think, but again, I'm kind of always looking at things on the different perspective, and it was a bit disappointment in one side of it, not being able to really make a real proper run at World Cup qualifying. I think we had so many talented teams. We had the one after the World Cup, and then the one that lost in the semifinals of the Gold Cup against the US on that controversial no goal from Atiba right at the end. That kind of cost us going into extra time against them. I think those two teams were really talented. I was able to live through both kind of generations, when I was just coming through with the Gold Cup winning team, and also when I was probably in more of my prime years when we lost in that semifinal of the Gold Cup. I think it was 2007, I want to say. I think both those teams disappointed in World Cup qualifying. We did well in the Gold Cups, and we played some fantastic football, and we played football what we should have been trying to mirror in the qualifying. But I think what comes to mind is one, we always had success at the Gold Cups, lost a couple of finished third, lost a couple of semi-final close battles, and won one. But unfortunately, not being able to really have a real legitimate go at World Cup qualifying is always remains a bit of a disappointment in my mind for us.
Okay, I got a great question coming in from Instagram from Piatti88. Who would win the Canadian men's national team from 2000 or?
Love that.
Tough one. 2000. You got to. Yeah, I mean, I got to bet on myself, can I? Don't I?
Yeah, I mean, that was a special squad. Just compare those two teams, though, and how that matchup would play out.
We would do what we did in 2000. We'd defend in a real low block. We'd catch them on the counter, and we'd win 1-0.
I could see that.
Big Forrest in the back of the net to save us a few times, and we'd battle a result.
We also asked Ian Hume this question here, and he actually mentioned a game against Libya as one of his more memorable experience. I believe you were also in that match. Maybe might have even scored. I think if my research was correct. But would that match be in your top 3 most memorable Canadian national team games? And if not, what are your top 3 most memorable matches at the international level?
Well, the one in Libya, that's a memorable one because he had Gaddafi's son was playing, and I don't know if Ian shared the story that when he got substituted, he shared that.
He did.
That was the longest substitution in the history of football and career.
I picture him going around the entire stadium doing a clap to all the fans. And
before he did that, he literally walked to every player on the Canadian team and shook their hand. So
did you do a jersey swap? You should have done the jersey swap with him right there.
Coming to a jersey swap. So he literally went. It was long, like I said, the longest substitution, and no one said a word. So it was let it go, and so that's got quite a memory there, and the trip itself was quite memorable, and there was a lot of different. We met. Ben Johnson was at our hotel at that time too, training out there. So it was, that had some memory as well. But the game itself, maybe not in my top 3, but the trip was definitely memorable.
What's your top 3?
Top 3 games? Well, for sure, Gold Cup. The final of the Gold Cup against Colombia, no doubt. Semi-final of the game against the U.S. where we were down 2-0 and we should have basically went into the extra time. Not memorable in terms of the result, but memorable in terms of that moment and how we played in the game and what kind of football we played as well. And then in the quarterfinal of that tournament as well, where we played. The 2-3 games we played leading into that semifinal against the U.S. were probably some of the best games that I've been a part of on that national team. In that 2007 Gold Cup, we played some real fantastic football going into that semifinal against the U.S. that year.
Mm-hmm. Paul, I want to get your take on this current men's national team, especially the recent matches that they played. The 2-0 win over the U.S., which we will be airing tonight. So you can watch it on our One Soccer YouTube channel. And so that was obviously a great result. But then the big defeat in Orlando a month later, the 4-1 loss. So what mistakes did Canada make tactically in that match that maybe you would have done differently if you were coaching that squad?
Well, it's tough to say. I mean, it's easy to look back and say, you got you got caught. You got caught in a game where their mindset was probably similar to the mindset that you had in the first game in September in Toronto. The mindset of I think in that game, the Americans were. I was watching in the stadium, and I'm not sure they were even bothered in the match. They didn't look like they were interested. That was probably one of the weakest performances I've seen from a U.S. team in a number of years, that game. mind you, Canada were very, very good on the day. They were on the front foot. They gave them no time. They gave them no space. U.S. kept trying to play out of the back. They kept playing right into the Canadians' hands. And Canadian team just kept winning the ball right back from them and putting them under pressure. But they were very stubborn in the way they wanted to play. They didn't try to bypass any lines. They kept playing out of the back. And then, unfortunately, they weren't good enough to play out of the back that day, and they were really struggling, the American team. But I think their mindset they just didn't look like they were there. They didn't look like they were ready to compete against that team. They weren't ready to put the battle in. And if you're not ready to put a battle in on the pitch, you can throw all the tactics out of the window, because the team that's ready to battle, that's ready to compete, is the team that's going to win most of the games. And if you reverse it to the next game, the mindset, I'm not saying the mindset, the Canadian team really wasn't there, but the Americans were ready to match that. They had an eye opener a month earlier, and they were ready to compete again, and they were ready to battle. And fortunately for them, they'd scored, I think, 3 set piece goals, if I'm not mistaken, on the day, the Americans, and they got off to an early goal real early in the game, so that kind of changed the momentum a lot. I think if the Canadian team would have maybe got that first goal, it would have been different. But I'm pretty sure it was 2, maybe even 3 set piece goals that were let in. That was a disappointment, and letting that early goal in really hurt the Canadian team. And then once the second goal went in, it was really it was tough after that to come back.
We know this team right now is struggling at the back. Even John Herdman himself hasn't been shy on being critical of the group back there and the leagues the defenders are currently playing in. But in terms of going forward, I mean, would you say this is the best group of attackers? With Junior Hoylett and Alphonso, you have multiple options up front in Cavallini or Jonathan David. Osorio's playing extremely well in MLS right now in terms of an attacking midfielder. How does this team going forward compare to maybe older days with guys like Di Rosario and Radzinski and those types?
Well, no, like you said, they're definitely they've got a lot more options. I mean, they're deeper. They have a decision on if you're going to play Lucas or Jonathan, or both, or and one or not the other. Is one on the bench coming off as a weapon as well. These are things that we in the past probably never had, and they definitely got that that depth of a squad that you haven't had. Not just in terms of that, they're all definitely strong on the ball. They've got weapons. They're able to finish. They're able to score goals, which is the difference too. You can have depth, but depth at what level? They've got some real strong depth at a higher level, at the highest level. Impacting games, and they're able to do that. They've got a lot of confidence on an individual basis, all those players. So yeah, no, I don't think a squad has ever been put together that's been fortunate enough to be at this place in one particular moment with that many attacking options available for them.
Do you think they can go to some of the places away from home in CONCACAF and really use those attacking options and play that kind of style, or do we need to see the team kind of mature and learn how to play a more kind of grind out defensive game in those types of matches, do you think?
Well, one thing is for sure, if you're not gonna, if you've got to be able to grind over result, and if you're not going to be able, if you can't grind results out away from home in qualifying and in especially in CONCACAF in those difficult environments, you will struggle. It doesn't matter how much quality you have and how talented you are going forward. In the end of the day, if when you go away from home and you're playing in those environments, you do, unfortunately, you've got to put in a grind, you got to put in a battle, and you've got to be able to prepare yourself to do that. If they can do that, I think when they do play their games at home, they're definitely have the ability, they have the quality to really play and beat amongst the best in CONCACAF, and they've done that kind of already. Whether they can do that on a consistent level during qualifying or over a qualifying campaign remains to be seen, which we struggled for in the past, but that remains to be seen. But you're going to have to go away from home and be able to get results if you're going to qualify for the World Cup.
Mm-hmm. All right, finally, a few quick questions before we start wrapping things up here. Got about 10 minutes left, so let's go through these. Best player you ever played with, Paul?
Best player?
Already, yeah.
Sorry?
You mentioned a few already, but who would you sum up as the best player you ever played with?
I like to say Johan Miku in Bremen. Again, not the most obvious, but in terms of household names for everybody, but one that really brought a mindset to our Bremen team that was a winning mindset. That he came into the club and into the city and said, one of the questions was in the headlines is why can't we win it? And it was the question was asked, who do you think is going to win it? And he said, why can't we win it? And everyone was like shocked at the time, saying, well, what arrogance does this French guy have coming in here to say why can't we win it? And literally within 2 years we won. And that headline came back. So he brought that mentality and also the talent, the footballing brain, and the way he played the game was for us. He brought us to the next level in terms of how we were in Germany and in Bremen.
Best player you played against?
Ronaldo, probably. Easy one.
What was I was, when we were doing some research for the show, I was looking at your Champions League season after you won the league and saw you played against Inter. What was Adriyano like compared to Ronaldo?
Yeah, Adriyano at the time, people would if really knew that Inter team, he was probably amongst the top 2-3 strikers in the world at that time.
Yeah.
A real handful, left foot, big guy, could mobile, was dynamic, had speed, really strong and powerful. He was, like I said, at that time, he was amongst the top 2-3 strikers in the world. Fantastic player.
Best coach you played for?
Thomas Schaaf.
Yeah.
How does a manager like that stay so long at one club? Like, does the message ever get stale? How do you handle that?
No, I don't know if it gets stale. He was, like I said, he could manage the individual players, and he knew how to speak to the individual, handle players in a different basis on a different level. But attacking mindset, attacking football. He'd rather win the game 5-4 than 1-0. We had a couple of results like that where we high-scoring games where we came out in front, but he was definitely an attacking-minded footballing coach. He wanted to attack. He wanted to play high pressure up the field, very similar to what some of these modern coaches are playing. But something that we were doing a number of years ago in Bremen, where we were pressing higher up the pitch and really attacking from that side of the pitch instead of from the back all the way to the front.
Biggest regret from your playing career?
Like I said, I already touched base on the international games with Canada, not being able to get over that hump in qualifying and make a proper run and get myself into or get the team and help the team into qualifying for a World Cup.
Most memorable win?
Most memorable win, Bayern Munich away from home.
Yeah.
Championship when we won the championship. Best
stadium you've played in?
Best stadium, I like Dortmund Stadium a lot. That was a fantastic place to play football in.
Yeah. Best story
Azteca is an absolute dream as well.
Call it a nightmare.
Well, the score is usually a nightmare, but the stadium itself is unbelievable. Got
that long walk down that long tunnel.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible. But you do walk by about a lot of history. For those who haven't been to Azteca, the long tunnel is lined with all the players who have played there and the biggest results. So it is kind of a walk down. It's almost like you're in a museum in some ways.
Yeah, no, fantastic place. The list could go on and on. There's so many fantastic places that I was fortunate enough to play. I haven't even touched base on England. I was actually at Tottenham last year playing in their new stadium before it even opened, in a Legends game, and that stadium is that's next to none right now. That's real in terms of modern and the way they built that. That's amongst the top in the world for sure.
I always quite like Craven Cottage.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Look, I like the old English stadiums. I love them. I loved White Hart Lane. I liked Craven Cottage, Villa Park, any of these old stadiums that's got that close-knitted pitch to it. FC Cologne in Germany had that as well. It was a big stadium, but very, rectangular shaped, 4 stands on each side of the pitch, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Best story you've never told. Kurt swears that he'd be able to get this out of you.
No, I can tell you there's that. Jeez. No, I don't know. Best story I've never. I can't. Who knows? At this, I don't know.
All right.
Like, just throw me under the bus like that. You didn't ask the question right.
What move almost happened but fell through?
What move almost? Well, there was a couple that probably only before I went to Tottenham when I was I was in negotiations with a few clubs at that time, and it was a tough decision whether to stay in Bremen or leave at that time when I was my contract was up. But there was a couple of clubs in Germany that I kind of didn't really wasn't really interested in leaving and going to, because it was if I was going to stay, it was going to be in Germany, but or in Bremen, sorry. And then the other option was heading to England, and there was a couple options there, but on another day I'll tell you those.
There's no chance at an MLS homecoming at any point, or
there right at the end when I'd come back, there was a couple options, maybe vague, not really 100% certain. There was there was some talk, nothing really concrete at the end there. No.
Okay, biggest rivalry: Tottenham, Arsenal, Bremen, Hamburg, or Toronto Lynx, Montreal Impact. I guess it was. I don't know.
Tottenham, Arsenal, something on a different level. I mean,
yeah.
that's a big one. That's a huge one. Once that game gets on and once that game gets going, it was that's a big one. And I think the difference between those two games and even like a Bremen Hamburg or Bremen Bayern is a big one, although it's not on it's not a derby itself, but it was a huge game because in the 90s that was big, Bremen won, and in the early 2000s was Bayern's real the team that really battled them at that time for the championships. And the difference in the Arsenal Tottenham game, there's just the fans are so into it and they're so passionate about it, and you've got to be there's games that you just can't afford to be to make mistakes. You can't afford to have a bad day because one, the English won't when you do something well and memorable for the club, will never let you forget it. But if you do have a howler, if you do have a beast in one of those games, you're probably punished for a long time in that football. So you without Tottenham, Arsenal, the biggest one.
All right, quickly, just about to wrap up here, but it's been a blast chatting with you, Paul, once again. I need to know what's the best way to spend 15 minutes of exercise, because I feel a little lethargic at home these days. Yeah.
Interval training. Go for it, man.
All right. Appreciate it, Paul. Thanks so much for joining us once again. Congrats on the new gig with York9. For Kurt Larson, Oliver Platts, I'm Mason Raymond. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers,
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
You too.